Hello everyone. Welcome to today's story. Tonight, we follow Tuna and Alex into their most desperate hours when baby Henry is stolen by the ex-mother-in-law. She is determined to take him away, far enough so mother and son may never meet again. Will this be their last chance to rescue Henry before he disappears forever? Can Alex protect Tuna when the past threatens to tear her child away? And if love is stronger than despair, will it be enough to bring Henry back home? Stay with us until the end of the video, and don't forget to subscribe so we can reach 1,000 followers together. Your support gives us strength to share more stories filled with drama, emotion, and life lessons. The day began in fragments of ordinary sounds. The hum of machines at the factory, Huang's voice over the phone reporting a broken wood chipper, and the steady rhythm of work that demanded attention. Life seemed predictable, locked into the machinery of tasks and repairs. Yet beneath this mechanical cadence, silence trembled, as if warning of a shift too subtle to name. Far from the factory, in the soft breath of the countryside, Tuna's hands moved with quiet patience. She picked ripe custard apples, their pale green skins warm under the sun. Her small basket, lined with leaves to keep the fruit unbruised, carried both labor and tenderness. Nearby, her child, Henry, slept, cocooned in fragile peace. The air carried the smell of earth and firewood, a reminder that life here was carved out of resilience. To Tuna, each movement was survival. Selling fruit at the market, saving for milk, caring for her child while navigating the weight of loneliness. Her days were stitched with simplicity, but beneath it lingered an ache too deep to voice. It was the silence of someone who once loved and lost, who now guarded her only anchor, her son. The world appeared calm, yet every glance, every pause, held an unseen fragility. Like thin glass stretched across water, her life gleamed with fragile beauty, but could shatter with the slightest touch. And somewhere beyond the orchard, unseen eyes were watching, their gaze carrying the first stirrings of a storm. From the edge of the farm, a shadow lingered, quiet, deliberate, cloaked not in violence but in memory. Tuna's ex-mother-in-law stood watching, her figure half hidden beneath the branches. The afternoon light caught her face, lined not only by age but by regrets that had hardened into resolve. In her silence lived echoes of choices long past. She had once cast Tuna out, unable to accept her as family, blind to the fragile life growing inside her. Now, that life had a name, Henry, and his small breaths had become the thread stitching together her regret and her longing. She whispered to herself words that no one could hear, apologies wrapped in bitterness, love tangled in control. The orchard, fragrant with fruit, seemed to mock her solitude. She saw Henry not only as a grandson, but as a chance to rewrite her story, to reclaim what she believed was lost through Tuna. Each step closer to the farmhouse was not a march of cruelty, but of desperation. She carried the weight of a woman who could not forgive herself, but who twisted that guilt into possession. To her, Henry was not just a child. He was absolution, and she would not let him remain in a world where she felt excluded. As the wind stirred the trees, the peaceful rhythm of the farm began to shift. A storm had entered quietly, not with thunder, but with the gaze of a grandmother who believed that love meant taking rather than returning. The house was quiet when Tuna laid Henry down, his tiny chest rising and falling in fragile rhythm. She brushed a hand across his forehead, whispering a mother's promise before stepping outside to fetch firewood. The late afternoon air was cool, carrying the faint crackle of leaves underfoot, and for a moment she believed the silence would keep her son safe. But silence has a way of turning cruel. When she returned, arms full of kindling, the stillness inside the house felt wrong. Emptier, heavier. The cradle was bare. The woven blanket lay crumpled, abandoned as though torn from her hands. "Henry?" Her voice quivered into the air, breaking apart against the wooden walls. She called again, louder, each syllable splintering with dread. The orchard seemed to echo her panic, the trees swaying as though they too were searching. Her knees weakened. The firewood fell to the ground with a dull thud. She staggered through each corner of the house, into the yard, calling her son's name with a desperation that scraped her throat raw. The world narrowed into fragments. Her heartbeat, the hollow of the empty cradle, the echo of Henry's absence. No intruder, no trace. Only the suffocating knowledge that her child was gone. Tuna collapsed to her knees, her hands clawing the earth as though she could pull him back from its silence. The air itself felt hostile, heavy with the weight of loss. In that moment, she was not just a mother searching for her child. She was a heart torn open, stripped of its anchor. Her trembling hands fumbled for the phone. The screen blurred through her tears as she pressed Alex's number. When his voice answered, calm but startled, the dam inside her broke. "Henry, he's gone." The words fractured in her throat, carrying both confession and plea. Within moments, Alex was there, his presence cutting through the chaos like a hand reaching into deep water. He found her crouched near the doorway, her face pale with panic, her voice reduced to fragments of Henry's name. He didn't try to silence her grief. Instead, he let her collapse against him, her sobs muffled into his chest. "Breathe," he whispered, his words measured, steady, almost fragile against her storm. "We'll find him. I promise, we'll find him." Together they went to the police station, their footsteps heavy with dread. The room smelled of ink and old paper, its walls lined with authority. Tuna's voice cracked as she explained. She had left Henry asleep, stepped out for firewood, and returned to emptiness. Each detail deepened the weight in the air, as though the officers themselves felt the void of the missing child. Alex's suspicion lingered in every word he added. The memory of Tuna's ex-mother-in-law, her sudden visits, her gaze that clung too long on the boy. His hand tightened over Tuna's, as though binding her grief to his steadiness. In that dim-lit room, surrounded by officials and questions, Alex became her anchor, fragile yet unyielding. For a moment, her world did not collapse entirely, because his presence held it together. Night draped itself across the town as the search began. Police cars moved slowly through narrow roads, their lights cutting restless beams across empty fields. Alex guided them toward places where the ex-mother-in-law might have stayed, each stop unraveling into silence. A house she once occupied now belonged to strangers. Another held only neighbors who shrugged, their voices vague, their memories blurred. Tuna followed, her body present but her soul fraying. Every unanswered question deepened the chasm in her chest. Each empty doorstep was another denial, another echo that Henry was farther away than her voice could reach. The officers spoke in practical tones, notes scribbled, addresses confirmed, but to her, their words dissolved into noise. All she could hear was the absence of her son. She stumbled once, and Alex caught her arm, steadying her. "We'll keep looking," he murmured, though doubt shadowed his own eyes. His reassurances were like candles in the wind, flickering, fragile, yet the only light she had. The night air smelled of dust and damp wood, carrying a chill that crept into her bones. Tuna wrapped her arms around herself, as if holding on to the memory of Henry's warmth. She whispered his name softly, not for anyone to hear, but as a tether, an unbroken thread that no distance could cut. And still, the roads offered no answers, only the fading trail of someone determined to disappear, and a mother's heart stretched thinner with each passing hour. By dawn, exhaustion clung to every breath, but Alex's voice carried a sharpness that cut through despair. He recalled something Tuna had mentioned, her ex-mother-in-law speaking of relatives near another village, far beyond their farm. A chilling thought took shape. What if she intended not just to take Henry, but to vanish entirely into another place? The realization landed like a blade. This was not just loss, it was erasure. If Henry was carried away across distance, mother and child might never find one another again. Tuna felt her heart constrict, each beat a cry for urgency. Alex gripped her shoulders, forcing her eyes to meet his. "This is our last chance," he said, steady but heavy with dread. "If we don't find her now, she'll take Henry somewhere we can't reach." His words were not dramatic. They were truth, raw and unadorned. The police tightened their search, redirecting toward the nearby village. Tires bit into gravel roads, headlights piercing the morning mist. Tuna pressed her hands together, whispering Henry's name as though her breath could carry across fields, through walls, into her son's tiny ears. Every moment swelled with urgency, yet silence remained their only answer. The world seemed to hold its breath, the trees still, the sky waiting. Within that fragile pause lay the weight of a choice: fight for the final thread of hope, or surrender to despair. For Tuna, surrender was impossible. Love demanded pursuit, even when the path was closing. Darkness deepened, folding the village into silence. The police called an end to the night's search, their voices firm yet softened by weariness. "Tomorrow," they said, "we will continue." But to Tuna, tomorrow felt like a lifetime away. Alex led her gently back toward the car. She resisted at first, her feet refusing to move, her gaze clinging to the roads that had swallowed her child. "What if she takes him farther?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "What if Henry wakes up and I'm not there?" Her body shook as though every nerve carried the weight of absence. Alex wrapped his arm around her, guiding her forward. "If it was her," he said quietly, "she will not harm him. He is her blood. Hold to that." In his embrace, she found neither solution nor certainty, but a fragile refuge. The night stretched endlessly, every shadow whispering doubt. Yet in that fragile space between despair and dawn, a seed of endurance took root. Her grief was vast, but love was vaster still, and it bound her to hope. The car moved slowly down the road, its headlights carving a narrow path through the dark. Tuna leaned her head against the window, her breath clouding the glass. In silence, she made a vow to keep searching, to keep believing, even when the world felt empty. And in the stillness of her heart, a lesson lingered like a quiet echo. Love is not always about holding tightly. Sometimes it is about enduring the distance, trusting that what is lost can still find its way home.
Tử Na sống bình yên bên trai Henry, nhưng sóng gió ập đến khi mẹ chồng cũ bất ngờ xuất hiện, lợi dụng lúc Tử Na đi lấy củi, bà bế Henry đi, mang trong lòng sự hối hận lẫn toan tính chiếm giữ đứa cháu. Trở về nhà, Tử Na sụp đổ tuyệt vọng, gọi con trong vô vọng cầu cứu Alex và cùng anh đưa báo cảnh sát. Họ thì theo dấu vết nhưng chỉ nhận được những câu trả lời mơ hồ. Nỗi lo lắng dâng trào khi Alex nhận ra bà có ý định mang Henry sang nơi khác, cắt đứt hoàn toàn mẹ con. Đây chính là cơ hội cuối cùng để giải cứu Henry. Câu chuyện khép lại trong đêm tối để hỏi định có đủ đưa Henry trở về hay không.